Meg Whitman has left the country after serving for 2 years, a week after resigning from her position in the wake of Donald Trump's victory in the U.S. elections. Whitman says the Kenyan democracy remains a work in progress, but fundamentals like respect for human rights and the rule of law must be enhanced if the country is to maintain its global standing. She highlighted, among other issues, Kenya's first state visit to the U.S. in decades as her major achievements. Whitman gave the last word to our senior reporter, Bridget Ngana. Take a listen.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for speaking with us. For starters, you could let us know why you're here in Kumo County and what activity has brought you here as you wind up your tour of service here in Kenya.
So I'm here in Kisumu today to swear in this new cohort of Peace Corps volunteers. They've been in Kisumu for 3 months doing their training, learning Kiswahili, and today they graduate and then they go off to the communities in which they will work for 2 years. So it's a great celebration for them. The Peace Corps has been in Kenya for 60 years. There's well over 5,000 Americans who have been Peace Corps volunteers in Kenya, so I was delighted to be here. I've been to Kisumu probably 4, 5, 6 times. My very first trip outside of Nairobi was to Kisumu to meet with the governor here, and then this is my last trip outside of Nairobi, so it's sort of fitting. It wasn't planned this way, but it's fitting to have started in Kisumu and finished in Kisumu.
2.5 years later, how would you describe your tour of service here in Kenya?
I have learned a tremendous amount. I hope I've made a small difference along the way, but it's been an incredible experience. My husband and I have never lived outside the United States, and living outside the United States is different than just traveling. And so it's been a fantastic experience, and I want to thank the people of Kenya, the government of Kenya, for working so closely with the United States. And I think the U.S.-Kenya partnership is as strong as it's ever been.
What are some of the highs and lows of the work you've done here?
Well, I think the notable experiences are some of the work we've done in economic diplomacy, whether it was the American Chamber of Commerce summits where we introduced that presentation called Why Africa, Why Kenya, why foreign investors should invest in Kenya and in Africa broadly. And then, of course, one of the highlights was the state visit of the President of Kenya to the United States of America, the first state visit for an African head of state since 2008. And it was a remarkable trip. Also very proud of what we've done from a humanitarian perspective. When I arrived, it was the 4th year of failed rains. We were able to, I think, really help the people who were suffering from 4 years of drought. And then when the floods came, we were able to help out. And that is part of the role of USAID here, is humanitarian assistance in the most difficult times. And that's what Friends are for. Also very proud of the healthcare work we do here. I would say one of the best programs the United States has ever done is PEPFAR. And what's remarkable in Kenya, we are about at epidemic control of HIV/AIDS, and that is a milestone. 20 years ago, that was not obvious that that could be achieved. So those are the highlights. And I don't really think there's too many lowlights. You know, it's that sometimes working in the federal government is more bureaucratic than I'm used to. And then sometimes when we work with the Kenyan government, we've got 2 bureaucracies working together, so that can be a challenge as well. But overall, it's been a remarkable experience.
It's quite interesting that you've mentioned PEPFAR. PEPFAR has been a lifeline for millions of Africans, and even here in Kenya for people living with HIV. Now, with the change of government or the transition taking place in Washington, do you think that people who depend on PEPFAR funding here in Kenya should be concerned?
Well, what I can tell you is both countries have had transitions of power over the last 60 years that we've been working together, and somehow, some way, the governments, as they change, end up forming a great partnership, and I think that will continue. You might recall, people ask me about the new president all the time. Well, you might recall he actually started the Development Finance Corp and doubled the funding. He also was very much in favor of the free trade agreement, which then transitioned to a strategic trade and investment partnership. So I think Kenya and the United States will remain partners, will remain friends, despite various, different leaders of these two countries.
Your appointment was something out of the norm. Previous ambassadors to Kenya have had a history of being career diplomats, but you were right from the corporate sector. Tell us if at all you've met some of the expectations that you had coming here, and if truly you represented the expectations of the Biden administration.
Well, I'd like to think I've represented the objectives of the Biden administration. I didn't know what I would be able to accomplish, and so when I first got to Kenya, I took a couple of months to go out and meet people. What I have learned in my long career is truth is never at the headquarters. Truth is out in the field, whether it's Kisumu or Bungoma or Kilifi or Mombasa. And what I determined after a couple of months was, from an economic diplomacy perspective, the narrative on Africa and the narrative on Kenya in the United States was 20 years old. People did not understand the opportunity here. And through our roadshows and the state visit, I think we have begun to change the narrative on Africa and particularly on Kenya. You might be interested to know that Kenya was the largest destination for startup capital on the continent in 2023. More startup capital than went to Nigeria, went to South Africa, two countries with much bigger economies. So I think Kenya should be very proud of Silicon Savannah and the startup ecosystem here. Kenya is really the center of technology for East Africa and actually probably for the continent as a whole. And so I think all the ingredients are here. Great universities, big tech companies who can seed talent to smaller tech companies, venture capital, and connectivity. And so all those things are working together, and I think Silicon Savannah has a real chance to truly be the Silicon Valley, if you will, of the continent of Africa. So I encourage young people to major in STEM, learn computer science, learn technology, because today every business is a technology business. Agriculture is a technology business. Education is a technology business. And so the future, I think, is really bright for young Kenyans in technology.
Some of your predecessors came to Kenya and left with permanent links, some building social and family ties, and others leaving behind businesses. So what will Kenya remember Meg Whitman for, or what would be that Kenyan link that Meg Whitman will carry with her as she leaves?
You have a remarkable, it's hard to make generalizations about countries, but the Kenyan people are always warm, always welcoming, with a smile. And many big U.S. companies say that this is their best workforce in the world, is their Kenyan workforce. So something to be super proud of, I think. The other thing about your country, which everyone knows, is the incredible beauty. The animals, the landscapes, whether it's the Mara or Borana or Laikipia or Amboseli, or some of the lesser-known national parks up in Homa Bay or in Elgeyo Marakwet. And so that will stay with me. And so the way I will stay involved is certainly with my friends, but also I will continue to shepherd two conservation initiatives that we've begun here. And also I'm very interested in seeing what can be done for the Nairobi National Museum. That could be the greatest museum for the origins of man anywhere in the world, and so I'm going to see if I can help that along in some way.
The United States is known as a strong protector of civil and human liberties. Do you feel your office represented these principles during the June 25th anti-tax or anti-government protests, and also even now in the wake of abductions and disappearances, forced disappearances of people? Do you believe that your office lived true to these principles?
So I believe we have spoken out more forcefully, both in public and in private, than any other head of mission here. And we have issued one or two of our own statements, in fact, two of our own statements. We've joined statements with the other heads of mission. We have had our Undersecretary for Human Rights come visit and hold a press conference afterwards. And I can tell you, privately and behind the scenes, we have been working for what I would call our shared democratic values. And so, listen, every democracy is a work in progress. The American democracy, after 250 years, is a work in progress. And so is Kenya. And we try to argue for human rights, civil society, and democratic values.
So what did you do outside the normal office obligations that you had here?
We love to hike. So we've hiked the Nagang Hills, 10 times, maybe 15 times. Everywhere we go on safari, we try to hike. We do walking safaris. I've been to almost all of your national parks, which has been an amazing experience. I've been to 28 counties out of the 47.